Actions are the backbone of Wire because it allows us to interact from frontend to the backend via events. In front of you, you have the code from previous cast, where I removed all unneeded code for now. So basically we're left with one name input and a multiple select. Well, let's think of it. In the real application, we are missing something here, and we are missing the submit button. Let's add it. I'm going to add a button, which will be our form submit. And I want Wire to catch this submit event. To do so, we have a special attribute in Wire, which is Wire semicolon click equals with the method we want to call on our PHP class. This pretty much means that whenever someone will click on this button, a method called submit will be called. We didn't define yet the method, but let's see what's happening here. If we open our network type, we click submit. Of course, we get the 500 error, but we can see that unable to call component method. Public method submit not found. Let's define this method. While we are here, I would like to take the opportunity to mention that anything we define with public, be it method or property of a class, this means that it can be accessed or set from the front end, while everything which is private and protected usually is used for internal needs of our class. This is important as of security concerns, but I'll come to this later and will explain. Back to the submit button. So when users are clicking the submit button, the submit method will be called, and we can access all the data submitted by the user in our method. Let me set a breakpoint here so we can debug it. And when I'm going to my form, filling in some data, submitting, inspecting this object, we can see that all user data is available here. Until we were referring to our contact functionality as a form, but it's not really a form, even though it behaves as a form. So let's make it a real form. This would still perfectly work. However, we can use a different approach to catch the submit event by adding on the form level a wire submit, which is the JavaScript event, prevent equals save. I have mentioned before that actions can be added on any element, and this time is not different. So by specifying submit after semicolon, we are saying that this is a submit event, and prevent modifier will make sure that we'll delegate the action handling to us. By the way, after wire semicolon, we can use any JavaScript event, even custom emitted events. Example, custom dash event. Let's revert these changes. Alright, and one more thing actually we can do in this form. Instead of a lazy modifier, we can use the defer modifier for our models. Because like this, there will be no request to the server until we hit the submit button. Which I didn't really add, so let me add it now. Back to the page. And I'm filling in all inputs, no requests are being sent, and only after hitting submit, the request is made, but looks like I'm having an error. And it looks like I'm calling the wrong method. I specified save, but I don't have such a method on my PHP class. I have submit, but okay, it can be save. No big deal here. Let's try again, filling the form, no requests. And only after hitting submit, I have a request. Also, actions can be used in combinations with models. This would allow us, for example, to allow users when hitting enter to submit the form, being focused on the name input. To do this, we can catch the enter event with wire semicolon key down dot enter, where enter can be any key, and we'll call the method save. Let's check if this will work. Refreshing the page, filling in some data, and I'll hit enter on my keyboard, and the form got submitted. Very little effort to achieve such functionality in my opinion. Okay, so far we concentrated on handling the main submit event of the form, but we can add additional actions. For example, a reset button. As before, we need to define the action of the button, so wire click equals reset form, and we need to create this method on our PHP class. PHP Storm is already suggesting what we want to do, and yes, we want to reset our public properties to their initial state. In our browser now, if we refresh, we have our reset button. Let's fill in some data. And on reset, we get the default state of our values, so basically cleaning up our inputs. Via actions, we actually can send parameters as well. To keep things simpler, I suggest we rename this action to reset name. So this button will be responsible to reset the name only. But instead of passing an empty string, I want the default value to be a specific one, Aaron in this case. Now, on our method in the PHP class, we should be able to receive this value as an argument and set this argument as a default value. Now, in my form, after I click reset, I don't get an empty string anymore, but Aaron. At this point, it's very important to understand that whenever we send values via actions, we should treat it very cautiously. Let me show you what I mean. If we inspect the HTML of our button, we can see that our value is literally an HTML and can be edited by anyone who has bad intentions. We can change it into a malicious code, effectively meaning that we've been breached. So the lesson here is to never trust the user input and always treat it respectively. We have an alternative way to set property values with the magic keyword set, which receives as a first argument the property name we want to set, which is name in our case, and value as a second argument. If we check the page, everything works identically. Okay, for the next example, I want to revert everything back to as it was, calling a method on the class, but I'll rename it to reset. Argument can be deleted, and the idea is that we have a helper method on the class, this reset, and when it's called, it will reset our values to their default state. On our web page, it looks like I'm getting an error. And yes, this is because we are calling a method which is reserved by wire component. Let me rename it to reset values. Let's give it another try. I'm typing something, resetting. Yes, everything is back to default state, which is empty state. If we would add a default value right when defining our property, this value would be used as default value. We already have it at the initial load, and when resetting, again it comes here.